Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. Right here is Miss Jennifer Valley, who is running for Clackamas County Council. She's one of our guests tonight. Thanks for coming on, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Right next to me is that wild and crazy guy, Mr. Casper Leach. And over in the wings is Mr. John Cornett, ready to play some tunes. We have a hemp news segment for you tonight, a couple good videos, and we'll be back moments after our infamous dancing cannabis leaves.
I feel the force.
All right, our first hemp news story tonight is from the other corner of the country, Augusta, Maine. Maine officials announced Wednesday that a proposed initiative to end marijuana prohibition in Maine has officially qualified for the November vote. After a court-ordered review of petitions it had previously invalidated, the Maine Secretary of State's office determined that the campaign to regulate marijuana like alcohol submitted more than the 61,123 signatures that were needed to qualify for a vote. Last month, the Maine Secretary of State informed the campaign that the initiative had been disqualified because only 51,543 valid signatures had been submitted. The campaign filed a lawsuit challenging the decision, and Kennebec County Superior Court judge ruled in their favor earlier this month after learning state officials invalidated more than 5,000 petition sheets, which included more than 17,000 signatures from Maine voters, without actually reviewing the petition in question. The petition was then remanded to the Secretary of State's office to review all the disputed petitions and determine whether enough valid signatures were collected. According to a new poll released this week by the Maine People's Resource Center, nearly 54% of likely voters would approve the initiative if the election were held today. Only about 42% said they would oppose it. And a identically named campaign in Arizona, the Arizona Campaign to Regulate Marijuana Like Alcohol, announced earlier this month that it had more than enough signatures to qualify to get marijuana legalization on the Arizona 2016 ballot. The campaign announced that it surpassed the 200,000 signatures with 150,000 valid signatures. However, a poll put out by an opponent organization called Arizonans for Responsible Drug Policy found just 43% support for legalization. Per AZ Central, the survey shows 43% of likely voters support legalizing marijuana for recreational use, while 49% would vote against it. About 8% of the likely voters were undecided. In Rhode Island, lawmakers there are considering a bill to legalize recreational marijuana in that state. The bill, H. 7752, is known as the Marijuana Regulation, Control, and Taxation Act, and it would make possession of small amounts of marijuana legal for adults 21 years of age or older. It would also establish a tightly controlled system of licensed marijuana cultivation sites, testing facilities, and retail stores. A recent poll was conducted by Brown University, which found strong support for such a public policy change. Per Brown University, a strong majority of Rhode Island voters, 67%, support the state's current law allowing the use of marijuana for medical purposes, and a majority, 55%, support passing a law to regulate and tax the use of marijuana for adults, similarly to how alcohol is taxed. On the science front, using state-level death certificate data from 1999 to 2010, a group of researchers discovered that the annual rate of opioid overdose deaths decreased substantially, an average of 25% following the passage of medical marijuana laws, compared to states still under cannabis prohibition. The increase of opioid prescriptions in the United States has had devastating public health consequences, including addiction, organ damage, and death. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recently urged physicians to be very cautious in prescribing these drugs. What a lot of people don't realize is these opioids and painkillers are addictive within 72 hours. And if you're taking them more than 72 hours, there's going to be withdrawal symptoms. So fortunately, cannabis is the solution. In Washington, D.C., about 5,000 people attended the inaugural National Cannabis Festival on Washington, D.C.'s RFK Stadium Fairgrounds last Saturday, with the goal of bringing together the district's newly legal marijuana industry and advocating for broader legalization. According to Carolyn Phillips, an NCF organizer, she says, "We're going to keep pushing until we get the laws we want," end quote. Revelers brought pipes, bongs, and learned the best indoor cultivation practices and picnicked while enjoying an open-air concert at the festival. The NCF had officially banned marijuana at the event, and public consumption of cannabis is illegal on federal land, but some attendees lit up anyway, and the federal park security looked the other way, fortunately. The states of Nebraska and Oklahoma are asking to intervene in an ongoing court case in their newest effort to overturn marijuana legalization in Colorado. The U.S. Supreme Court dismissed a proposed lawsuit brought against Colorado by the two states last month. Earlier this month, Nebraska and Oklahoma responded by asking to be added to a case at the 10th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in Denver. That case is consolidated of two separate appeals filed by legalization opponents whose lawsuits were dismissed by a lower court. Nebraska and Oklahoma's motion means that all the ongoing challenges against Colorado's legalization of marijuana have merged into a single court case. Since Colorado became the first state in the country to allow licensed stores to sell marijuana to anyone over the age of 21, the state's faced a number of lawsuits seeking to overturn the law. None of them has succeeded. One lawsuit was brought by a group of county sheriffs. Another was brought by the owners of a rural property next to a marijuana grow. In both cases, the plaintiffs, backed by national anti-legalization organizations, argued that federal laws criminalizing marijuana should override state law. Federal judges in Colorado dismissed both earlier this year, prompting the appeals, which were later consolidated into a single case. Earlier this month, the attorney generals in Nebraska and Oklahoma filed a motion asking to intervene in the appeal. According to lawyers for the two states, they wrote in their motion, quote, "This is an exceptional case involving an imperative reason for intervention," end quote. Nebraska and Oklahoma argue that marijuana legalization in Colorado violates their sovereignty and requires them to spend more money arresting, jailing, and prosecuting an increasing number of people caught bringing marijuana into their state. By not allowing them to participate in the case, the two states say the appeals court, quote, "may effectively decide Nebraska and Oklahoma's claim before it has a chance of being litigated in front of any court," end quote. Well, that's the end of our Hip News segment tonight. And John Cornett standing by, ready to play some music. Hey, John.
Hey, Paul, how you doing?
Very well. How are you?
I'm good. Hey, this is a song I wrote a long time ago when I first came around here, and I'd like to do it for you now. Ganja, I like Merganja. Ganja, I like to use Merganja. Ganja, I want Merganja. Ganja, I want to share Maraganja. For food or energy, prohibition must end. Maraganja.
Thank you, John. John Cornett.
Got the words in that one.
Hey, I'd like to welcome you on the show again, Jennifer, and good to see you, Casper. You've got your button on, Clackamas County Commissioner, number 3. Is that right?
It is.
So that's a district inside. How many commissioners are there?
There are 5 spots,
5 spots?
and I'm running against incumbent Martha Schrader.
Who I take it has been an opponent of cannabis.
You know, she hasn't really been particularly an opponent, but when it came time to vote, she voted with all of the other commissioners on incredibly bad legislation that's being called the template. And basically, it's a template for zoning cannabis out of the county without opting out. And that way they don't have to have a vote, which means they were able to keep this out of the election cycle until I decided to run for office, which means I made cannabis an election issue in the middle of their primary. And if I should manage to come in second place or even, God forbid, first place, that means it'll be an election issue all the way until November.
Right. So tell me about the structure there. Is it Democrat, Republican? I mean, here in Multnomah County, if you don't get the Democratic nomination, you don't get it. But I think it's not that way in Clackamas County.
It's
is that right?
nonpartisan in
Nonpartisan
Clackamas
election.
County, and they've had a lot of involvement with Alec and the Koch brothers for the last 5 or 6 years. Because it's a very conservative district, and and they've managed to take 2 of the seats. They've got the chair, and they've got Tootie Smith. And Paul Savas is kind of conservative, but he's like independent. The other 2, Jim Bernard and Martha Schrader, are both Democrats, and I'm running against Martha Schrader, even though I'm a Democrat too.
So is it like a geographical district there?
No, it's countywide, and
Okay.
there are 3 positions up right now because they don't want to have the entire board disappear all at once. So I'm running against Martha Schrader because her only opponent was a fellow named Steve Bates, and he talks about the smell of cannabis as the putrid odor. And he would rather smell the smell of trees being cut.
Oh, I see. So I guess he disagreed when the Oregon Supreme Court ruled that the smell of marijuana isn't offensive, and
He definitely
he
disagreed
definitely
with that
disagrees
one.
with that. Yeah,
And well,
putrid. He used the word putrid.
he used the word putrid.
So, are you going to suggest that around the marijuana or cannabis gardens that we build a wall, a huge wall to protect our gardens and to keep those citizens from having to deal with it?
Actually, that's already in the Clackamas County districting rule.
build
Their
a
new
huge
rules
wall?
that they just made. Oh yeah. So
So are
and
they
that's-
Trump supporters? That's the next question.
That's
we
one of the
got.
reasons that I'm running, is because I was so outraged at the ridiculous regulations that they put in place. There are a bunch of nuisance laws that are designed to keep us from participating in our rights. Much like down in Texas, where they put incredible nuisance laws in place on abortion for what they called safety reasons, and made it impossible for women to have access to what they have a right to.
So, what kind of nuisance laws are they putting in place here in Oregon?
Well, you're not allowed to, let's see, anything residential. So even rural residential parcels of 5 acres, you can't have your garden outside. That has to be indoors under a roof, which means we're going to have an incredible impact on our power grid, which is unfair because in Clackamas County, cannabis grows outstanding. And there's no safety reason for it. My problem is they're basing it on, they say, well, what if children can get it? And I have to say, first of all, parents have a responsibility to supervise their children, number one. And the second thing, they have a responsibility to teach their children to be decent citizens. Don't steal, don't trespass. And third of all, we need to recognize that people who use cannabis and grow cannabis have the same property rights as every other citizen, and that has never been a consideration in the past, and it needs to be now that this is legal.
Well, and like you said, people need to take responsibility for their own children. I know growing up, my mom and dad liked to have scotch and beer in the house. But as a third grader, I even knew as a kindergartner, I couldn't touch the bottles in the refrigerator or in the cabinet. I wasn't supposed to drink out of that glass if it had beer. I mean, I was educated. So unless you're telling me that today's kids have an IQ of a rock, I really think that a lot of this is nonsensical too, don't you? Just little education and kids get it.
I think it's an abdication of parental responsibility to the nanny state, and I think we have to encourage parents to be more present in raising their children.
Well, I agree with that. You know, we do take viewer phone calls, and if you have a question or comment for us tonight, you can call us at that number there on your screen. It's 503-288-4442. That's 503-288-4442.
My mom says she didn't start drinking until she got pregnant with me.
That explains it. That really starts to explain it. You know, fetal alcohol syndrome or something like that. Anyway, we have a little video clip we're going to run right now, and this is from Washington, D.C., and it talks about the National Cannabis Fair they had in RFK Stadium. We talked about it just briefly.
How cool.
And here's a little minute of video.
Attendance is great so far. We're expecting, I think, almost 5,000 people today.
Each little internode on the side will form a bud all the way down.
It smells like weed.
Amnesty for non-violent drug users.
We're gonna keep pushing until we get the laws that we want.
Okay, we want to thank the folks at Reason Magazine and Reason TV for putting that together. So I know you want to encourage everyone to come out and run for office, don't you?
I think it's really important to run for office. I've had an opportunity to elevate our issue to a whole new platform and educate voters and also legislators who would never have an opportunity to hear my message. And in addition to running for office, just getting involved in policy meetings is hugely important.
It has a big impact. I mean, it's amazing how much you can shift, how, you know, the public can shift politicians' legislation.
Well, I'm finding a lot of these public meetings seem to be very secretive. I showed up for a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and when I got to the front desk, they told me the meeting didn't exist, and it was the second time I had to get through locked doors and folks telling me that this public meeting wasn't happening.
Really?
To find out that the meeting was actually happening.
Wow.
You know, I think representative democracy, you know, and I encourage you to run for office. I've run for office before in the past, back in the 1998 legislative session, ran for state rep. Came out in third out of a slate of 6 people. Diane Rosenbaum won that. It was her first successful election. She's a senator now, but I encourage people to run as well. But I really think the very nature of representative government lends itself to corruption. And so you obviously are talking about something very corrupt. They're trying to keep the public out of public meetings. That's just very corrupt.
Well, look at what they're doing. They have worked really hard to thwart the will of the voters on legalization of marijuana. We have action at state level, at OHA level, at OLCC level, at county level, at city level. The cannon fire is coming in from so many directions, there's no way to duck. And there's a lot of medical marijuana patients who have no idea how to fight back. And the first thing I would say is go online to the Oregon Health Authority's calendar and look, and they have meetings almost every day. And if we all show up and start telling them, you work for us, we can have an impact.
Yes, we certainly can. I've seen legislation change right in the debate by coming in and taking part in that. But if they're trying to keep you out of the debate, it's hard to influence it, obviously. So if people are interested in getting involved in your campaign, how can they do that? I mean, if you're in Clackamas County, obviously, vote for Jennifer Valley for position number 3.
I have a website, jennifervalley.com, and you can go there and contact me. And we're going to be having a party on election night to watch the returns come in. And we'll also be marching in the Rose Parade next week.
Or the Global Marijuana March.
We'll be doing the Global Marijuana March as well. We've done both of those parades the last 2 years in a row. We bring the entire family out, and they all carry flags. It's really cute.
Yeah. We'll have some videos about the Global Cannabis March. We'll be down at Pioneer Courthouse Square for the 17th Annual Global Cannabis March. It's coming up next Saturday, a week from tomorrow, May 7th. The event starts at noon. I know there's the Garcia band. There are several other notable musical acts. We'll have a little bit more information about that in a moment. But the march starts at 4 o'clock, and it's a march with a police escort through downtown Portland. So we encourage you to come out to Pioneer Courthouse Square in downtown Portland next Saturday from noon to 4 and be ready to march at 4.
So with the police escort, I guess that we're going to be smoking out with the police finally for the first time and having a big powwow with them and singing Kumbaya,
they
holding
block
hands
the route,
with
and we don't smoke out with them though.
Oh.
That's not something
we
that
hold hands and
they
sing
allow.
Kumbaya with them. And
Maybe
Cool.
that's in the realm of possibility.
Cool.
If you can find an officer who's game for that, you might find one.
Nice.
I don't know the words to Kumbaya myself.
I'll teach
You can
them
hum
to
the
you.
tune.
Yeah.
All right.
They actually invited my dispensary to be in their yearbook this year because some of the retired officers are starting to use
busted
cannabis.
it so many times, all the memories they've had of the arrests there.
No, because they're starting to use cannabis because they're retired and they're hurt and they're old.
And they don't want to be hooked to opioids.
Exactly.
I mean, that's like I was saying before, what a lot of people don't realize is that these synthetic opioids and opioid drugs themselves, the painkillers, are highly addictive. And once you have taken them for 3 or 4 days, you're hooked. And if you take them longer than that, you're more hooked. And so cannabis is what you need to transition to very quickly and realize the high addiction potential of these opioids. And as that news story said at the start of the show, in states that have medical marijuana laws like Oregon and Washington and California, we have 25% less opioid prescription deaths than states that don't have medical marijuana. So I know you've helped a lot of patients through your business. You want to tell our audience about your business?
Yeah, I was a stage 4 cancer patient and developed many different strains to help treat my own cancer. And when I was able to cure my cancer using cannabis extract oil, I started working with other patients. And over the years, we've discovered that the cannabis oil will treat diabetes and epilepsy and nearly any kind of cancer. And so I want people to know that. And we made a little movie that's on the YouTube showing them how to make the cannabis oil themselves that more than 7 million people have seen.
Now, did you take it like little doses at one time? Because I've had some of that cannabis oil, and if you take too much, you lose a week.
I'm pretty hardcore. I was able to do about 6 grams a day.
Wow.
Yeah, and I ingested.
That's hardcore.
Yeah, I ingested my 90 grams in about 6 weeks. And my body was using it. When I went in for my scans, there were 1 to 2,000, 1 to 2 mil-sized tumors eliminated from my lungs, and 3 larger masses that had previously been wrapped around my trachea completely gone.
Wow.
And that was the first time in 17 years that I had a clear scan. So
What's the name of your YouTube video for our viewers that might want to watch it?
We have it on Brave Michaela, and we have it on growforme.com as well. So go to growforme.com and you can find our oil video on there.
All right, great. Maybe we'll pull up a little segment for that in just a few moments here. We are taking your phone calls tonight. If you have a question for us, you can call us at 503-288-4442. That's 503-288-4442. And we do have a caller standing by. Welcome to the show, caller.
Well, good evening.
Good evening.
While I was on hold listening to your guest's story, I want to start off my comment by congratulating your guest on her recovery.
Yeah.
That is another fascinating and encouraging story about the benefits. And what I dialed your number for was to point out the fact that in my particular location on the Comcast network out here in East County, I have the privilege of dialing in Clackamas County government channel whenever I want. And I can also dial in Willamette Falls media and then, of course, also get Willamette Falls on the CAN network on Channel 11. But anyway, so I can dial in Clackamas County government channel and watch their meetings and stay abreast of what happens to our large county neighbor to the south. And I wanted to point out how ironic it is that as I've been watching Clackamas County government channel and the meetings, I find it ironic that I can watch Portland Community Media and see the Clackamas County candidate on Portland Community Media, and this is the first time I've heard of her, and I don't recall ever seeing you on the Clackamas County government channel or testifying at and I don't watch every meeting, but you're not a familiar face at the meetings, I imagine. And to my thinking, when I watch the Clackamas County government channel, the meetings, they seem to be an old boy network. Generally, it's the same people coming up to testify, and generally it's about the same topic, whether it's annexation for this or road improvements for that or something. And I wish you the best of luck and congratulations on your recovery. And if I lived in Clackamas County, you'd get my vote. But anyway, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
I can tell you that I am the only candidate for the Clackamas County Commissioner race that voted in favor of legalizing cannabis. And every place that I go, every forum that I have been to, they're completely shocked that I would dare stand up there with a cannabis platform. But the reality is, this has the ability to really solve a lot of problems for Clackamas County. We can provide a lot of jobs, we can provide a lot of infrastructure, we can provide improved health care, we can address the heroin issue and the other drug addiction issues that are going on in Clackamas County. I mean, it's really very, very huge.
There's a heroin problem up there?
There's a heroin problem in the entire state.
All over America.
Well, yeah, it's all over America, but in Oregon in particular, because of we have some of the highest usage of painkillers here, and what's happening is a lot of the pain management doctors are cutting patients off of their medications because they're being told that Oregon is using too many painkillers, and those patients still have pain, so a lot of them are turning to the streets and using heroin instead.
I just figured with cannabis being legal in the state for a medical substance that our heroin use would be at least lower than in other states.
The problem is most doctors don't understand how cannabis affects pain management. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, I
Jennifer?
think another piece of the problem is that we've had a major heroin problem here in Oregon for the last 15 years that isn't
or
being
50,
acknowledged
50,
or
right.
addressed.
Yeah,
But cannabis can address it. If we can replace morphine and Oxycontin using cannabis oil, and I know that we can, we need to be able to use cannabis oil to replace heroin and get people cured.
I agree, of course. We have a phone call and a studio audience member. If you're, let's go ahead and take that phone call first. Welcome to the show, caller.
Hello. I'm wondering if or how I can become a tester for the studies of cannabis and mental health.
Become a what?
Test subject for mental health.
I think they
studies.
put out ads when they're looking for people in studies. So you just have to read the newspapers. Is all the only advice I can give you on that.
All right.
At Reed College, students at the psychology class sometimes take me in for show and tell.
I understand that.
Cool. Thank you.
I guess they call that sharing nowadays.
Yes,
Show and
sharing.
tell in our day.
Yes.
But we have studio audience here. You're welcome to come down to our studio audience any Friday night. And we've got someone standing by our microphone in the audience right now. Welcome. Go right ahead, Judy.
Hey, a couple of things. When talking about pain management and the problem with heroin, Oregon creates a lot of problems for doctors that are trying to be humanitarians and helping people with pain. But we just read in the last 24 hours about Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts writing to the CDC, specifically an official letter, asking them to review and look at cannabis as a substitute for, as something that could help alleviate the problem in this country that we're having. So she was the first one to officially go on the record and ask the CDC, so they're gonna have to respond sooner or later, right? Yeah. And I really want to encourage Jennifer. Thank you so much. You are so well spoken, and it's not just to have the courage, but the time, your life to devote to public service, and particularly at this point in time when all of this underhanded, dirty trick stuff. You're talking about the Koch brothers. That does answer some questions, doesn't it, about why this is happening to us? Because this is not who we are as Oregonians. We don't, pass an initiative and then Congress takes off and goes crazy and does everything to thwart the will of the people, as you have said. This is not who we are. Now, granted, this is an unusual subject, but we do have to get our perspective. We have to get our perspective. These few years, these few decades of our country of not allowing us to have cannabis and forcing that around the world, this is an outlier in human history. This is an outlier. Scientists will tell us this based on our genetics, based on our DNA, literally based on our DNA. This period is an outlier. We human beings have used this plant for food and medicine and fuel and God only knows what else, building, construct, who knows, for thousands of years. And I think if we keep that in perspective, and the fact that nobody has ever died from this, including children, children.
I feel like a rebel and a patriot, and I feel like
You
for
are.
the first time I have the ability to participate in my government. And I want all of us to feel that kind of ownership and ability to participate. I haven't spent a whole lot of money on this. I haven't spent a whole lot of time on this, really. I've showed up at a few forums and stood my ground and spoke my mind, and I put a statement in the voters pamphlet. But I just really felt like it needed to happen, and like it needs to happen at every level, because we're being attacked at so many levels by the people who are supposed to be working for us. And they have a responsibility to do what we voted for, and instead they've decided to act decisively to try to keep prohibition in place. And they need to understand that they will not go unchallenged for that. But I can't be the only one who does it.
Aren't there other people who are running for office, not maybe in Clackamas County, but
I
there are
do
some
know
other...
there are like 7 or 8 other people. There's Stormy Ray is running for Senate out there in Eastern Oregon. There's a gal, Bree Malarkey, who's running for, I believe, House District. It's either House District or County Commission down there in Jackson County. And then there's a fella in Springfield who's running for City Council. So there's folks at all kinds of levels who are actually running on a cannabis campaign to let these folks know that we get to participate in our government now. You can't just yell marijuana and eliminate our right to be part of our community anymore.
Are you coordinating your campaigns together?
No.
No. They're
We all
separate.
seem to be independent.
Yeah, quite separate. We have another phone caller standing by. Welcome to the show, caller. Hello, caller. Oh, we lost him. Well, as you can see, we like to point out our hemp flame of freedom each week here. This is hemp oil. It's got a hemp wick. This is next week's hemp wick. And this is illustrative of the energy potential of hemp. And this is the main reason marijuana was made illegal. It was really the petrochemical industries that fed us this misinformation campaign we call reefer madness to have marijuana prohibited. When we can grow cannabis again, grow marijuana for its seed and for its fuel, fiber, and protein without regard to its THC content, but with regard to the most productive varieties and the best quality fuel, food, and fiber varieties, then we will transform our economy away from the synthetic alternatives out there and replace them with naturally grown substances. Instead of seeing all our wealth going to the petrochemical industries, we'll see it go to our farmers and our local communities.
Don't you have a couple of farms now where you are growing hemp?
No, I don't, but there are several. There were, I think, 8 people who were growing hemp last year. I think over 25 people who have licenses to grow hemp this year, but I haven't been doing that myself. So we have another little video clip we're going to run, and this is former Portlander Jorge Cervantes talking about how to grow a plant that yields over 10 pounds of flowers per plant. We'll be back right after this short video.
Wow, you may wonder how these plants could be so darn big, because every one's 8 to 10 feet tall. It's pretty incredible. The reason they're so big is because these growers know what they're doing. They come from years and years of experience. Now we're in 2nd and 3rd generation growers. That's why they take the time and energy to grow organically, because you got to remember, this is medicine. This is total medicine for people. And organic gives you not only a better taste, but there's no chemicals in it. And you have fewer insect problems, fewer mold problems, and it's just a healthier overall plant. And that's what I like. And if people say that they can grow bigger plants with chemical fertilizers, well, that's fine. You know, you can believe them. What I got here is proof. This place is amazing. There's 35 plants in this garden, 35 plants. I don't know if any of you have ever grown just 35 plants, but what I can say is I know you haven't grown 35 plants with a yield of 350 pounds. How do you do it? Well, it starts a long time before today, because this plant doesn't get this big unless it's got real strong, healthy roots. Roots that feed and bring in as many nutrients as possible, and also as much water as possible, as efficiently as possible. You want these stems to get as big as you can, so they have these like huge conduits in them, this vascular system that pulls all the nutrients up and all the water up, and it's like a super highway in there, right? So you want that as big and strong as possible. Well, the way you do that is you start with a little plant and you get a humongous root system on it. And the funny part is, most people don't realize most of the feeder roots, where all the air is, where all of the easy life is, and where all the life is in the top 18 inches. And the top 2 to 3 inches, or 4 inches even, is where most of the feeder roots are, and that's where most of the biology and activity takes place. So that zone is incredibly important to take care of.
Okay, so that was Jorge Cervantes. We want to thank him for allowing us to use his videos here and help us. He helped us in our garden earlier this year, but you've been helping. I know he's got his THC University, and you've been helping educate people here with
Port Amsterdam University. We
Port
started
Amsterdam, which is kind of a play off the Oaksterdam name.
Yes, I totally followed their model of teaching how to grow and cannabis politics. And we've been doing that since 2008. And we have classes down in Clackamas every other weekend. And it's a 2-day course, and we teach you everything from seed to sale, including how to make the cannabis oil that cured my cancer, and how to make water hash and make edibles, and how to open a dispensary if you want to and get involved in the cannabis industry.
So is it accredited?
It is. No, I don't think it's actually accredited yet, but we are working on that. We're also working with OLCC to teach the marijuana handlers licensure information. So we'll be offering those classes and classes tailored to the recreational growers, folks who are adults who want to grow their own cannabis at home.
So if someone wants to find out about Port Amsterdam, if I'm saying that right.
Port Amsterdam.
Okay. Where can they find out more information about that?
www.gro4me.com.
One more time.
www.gro4me.com.
Okay, grow for me, basically.
Yeah.
With a few letters changed
No
around.
W.
No W. Okay, well that's pretty good. So in terms of the election, our ballots just hit the mail. We got ours here in Portland yesterday. So you must have been pretty excited to see your name on the ballot.
I was. My daughter was really excited too. She took a photograph of it and posted it on social media, and she was family history being made. She was very excited for me. I was very excited.
Well, we're excited for you too. And thank you for standing up for our rights out there for so long, because you've been at this for quite a while, I know. When did you go through your cancer diagnosis?
I was diagnosed in 1993, and they gave me a 50% chance of surviving 6 months. And in 1995, they actually gave me last rites.
Really?
Yeah, I did experimental radiation and experimental surgery, and in 2007, they said they couldn't do anything else for me. And in 2010, I did cannabis oil and got rid of the last couple thousand tumors from my lungs.
Well, that's a lot of tumors. Gosh, that's a blessing.
When I was originally diagnosed, both of my lungs were completely encapsulated in a skin of tumors, and it looked like someone had dumped a sack of rice on my chest X-ray.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was actually world famous. If you're an endocrinologist or a surgical oncologist, you've heard of me.
All right.
It's a very small set.
Yeah, well, oncologists, there's a fair number of them, that's for sure. Well, again, we've got about 10 minutes left here. If you have a question or comment for any of us about ending marijuana prohibition, the regulations that are in place now, medical marijuana or industrial hemp, you can call us at that number there on your screen. It's 503-288-4442. That's 503-288-4442. We also have doctors across the country who can help you get your state's medical marijuana permit if you're looking for that, or a loved one that needs to find a doctor who can help them learn about medical marijuana. Then they can call us at that number there on your screen. It's 1-800-723-0188. That's 1-800-723-0188. If you're here in the Portland area, you can call locally at 503-281-5100. 503-281-5100. Casper here has been doing a radio show, and it has evolved into a series of about 40 different radio shows, I think, 40 different hosts on your internet radio network.
It has. We are a growing team of people who are dedicated to ending prohibition and getting the message out all around the world. And we ask that you tune in. We're on iHeartRadio, Tumblr, SoundCloud, any place where there is sound, we are found. And every other hour is talk, every other hour is rock. and we like to keep abreast of all what's going on in the cannabis hemp industry. And like a good joint, we're always best when you share us with your friends. Thank you, Paul, for the shameless plug.
So you have some other hosts on there. I know Andrea Herman, who's been a hemp expert, has been doing the iHemp radio show. What other?
We have Mark
hosts do you
Emery
have?
that does a show on the network. Skunk Magazine makes it a point to do a program each week, and Judge James Gray has a segment that he does for the network as well. And we've got Paul Stanford on, who does Cannabis Common Sense, and is also the joint host on my show on Thursdays. And so we make it a point to bring in some of the best minds from the marijuana movement, the cannabis movement, people who've been dedicated to raising the voice for a long, long time. Chris Conrad, Mickey Norris, groovy people like that.
Judge James Gray,
that's
the
right.
Orange
Judge, I
County
mentioned
Superior
him,
Court,
yes.
George.
And he's running for vice president on the Libertarian ticket this year with Governor Gary Johnson. So those of you who want to stop Trump but don't have an alternative, I mean, it'd be one thing if they said, we're going to stop Trump because we got this great candidate. But they're saying, we got to stop Trump and we got Lucifer incarnate in his place. So,
well, it's becoming clear, no matter how much we have supported Bernie Sanders in our efforts here, that the die was cast before the game ever really started.
That's right.
And Hillary Clinton is wrapping up the nomination now. So we have Hillary Clinton with incredibly high negative ratings. Mm-hmm. We have Donald Trump with even higher negative ratings. Last major election cycle in 2012, Governor Gary Johnson was running as a Libertarian, and he got a little bit more than 1% of the vote nationwide. That was a record for the Libertarians at the time. But with these two candidates that so many people dislike, it seems like third-party candidates have a real option and a real chance this time around. I saw a poll with MSNBC, and they asked just about 3 weeks ago, if you're going to vote, and the choice is Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton or Governor Gary Johnson, the Libertarian candidate. Hillary got 42%, Trump got 35%, and Johnson polled at 11%, which is incredibly high, especially at this stage of the game for a Libertarian. So I think there's a good chance that the Libertarian and the Green Party candidate, Jill Stein, could get a large share of the vote.
Or they could just end up drawing away the votes from all the candidates, and then the candidate that you don't want to get into office would end up being in office.
Well, the thing is, we don't elect our presidents directly.
No.
Otherwise, we never would have got Bush Jr.
That's right.
We would have gotten Gore.
We have the electoral college.
And the other piece is sometimes there's no one you want to vote for. I'm up there on the dais with 10 other people that I don't want to vote for at all because they're all so horrible on my issue.
Mm-hmm. Well, I do remember when Donald Trump came down that elevator and people laughed. About 2 weeks after that, I said on this show that there were only two candidates who were not bought and sold by Wall Street and the bankers. One was Bernie Sanders and one was Donald Trump. And if you want to get rid of the Clinton, Bush, Clinton, Bush, Clinton, Bush, Clinton, Clinton, Bush, Bush, Clinton, Bush group of people who have ran the White House for almost 60 years, dating all the way back, they've been in charge since Johnson was in office, basically, then the only thing you're going to be able to do is either vote third party and cross your fingers that they get more than 2%, vote for Donald Trump. And, you know, people say, well, if you encourage a vote for Donald Trump, you're a racist and you're a hater. That's not true. I'm just fed up with the lobbyists being in there. I'm just fed up with Clinton and Bush running the White House.
Well,
and I'd like to see an end to it.
My point that I wanted to get to a moment ago is that, you know, if Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate, or Governor Gary Johnson, former New Mexico governor, the Libertarian Party candidate, if either one of them can win just a few small states, or any of them win one large state, then none of the Democrat and Republican, Trump and Clinton, won't be able to get the majority in the Electoral College. So the Electoral College will be at a tie, and then it goes to the U.S. House of Representatives. under Paul Ryan and Republican control because of their gerrymandering
Well,
of the
if it's
votes.
Republican control, that means you got all the people who are bought and sold by the
Well, I
lobbyists.
mean, means we get Trump in the end.
No,
but
they'll
that
get
could
Hillary.
be
We'll get Hillary.
no. The Republicans aren't going to allow Hillary to get in there. It'll
they
be Paul
desperately
Ryan.
want to run against her.
Huh?
They've been planning to run against her for so long.
Yeah, well, they've definitely been building up the propaganda machine against her for sure. But
Well,
my point is that if this thing gets thrown into the House of Representatives, that could start a real revolution here, and that's what Bernie Sanders has been advocating. And hopefully we can see a peaceful revolution that can do away with this corrupt representative government that we've been forced to live with throughout our lives and our parents' and grandparents' lives. But, I'm a dreamer, so.
A lot of that is because we don't feel that we can participate. And another piece of it is that they've reduced wages so much that who can?
We've been led to believe this representative government is the best we can get. And given the breakthroughs in technology, that is no longer true. We all can directly vote for ourselves now. We don't need representatives to corrupt the system for us. That's my belief. We have another little video clip here that we're going to run. As we mentioned before, next Saturday on May 7th, over 300 cities around the world will be marching for cannabis, liberty, and justice in the Global Marijuana March. And we have our 17th annual Global Marijuana March here in Portland, down at Pioneer Courthouse Square. And we have a little video. We'll be back to talk a little bit more about it in just a moment.
There is a peaceful solution called the peace revolution, and now let's take back America. There was a dream, so believe it. Now get ready to receive it, and we'll take back America. There is a war and we're in it, but I know we can win it. Let's just take back America. And when the war is over and we won it, let's remember how we done it so we don't have to do it again. There's a peaceful solution called the peace revolution. Now let's take back America.
All right, so welcome back. So Jennifer, you want to give our audience a website to go to look for information?
We're www.gro4me.com.
One more time.
It's growforme.com without the W. So it's www.gro4me.com.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you for running. And if you're in Clackamas County, please vote for Jennifer Valley for position number 3. She can represent our interests there better than anyone else, obviously. So thank you for running, and if we encourage you to get involved in that. Thanks, Casper, and thank you, viewers. We're going to go out on a last song with our friend John Cornette. We'll be back here next week just before our Global Cannabis March. We hope to see you down there a week from tomorrow and help us restore hemp. Good night. Now it's back. Lily.